All right, so for this part of the project, you're going to need a few things. I'm going to be showing you how to grid your picture and then how to create the grid on your paper as well. All right, so you'll need a few things. As I said, you'll need your picture that you have chosen. You can have, the picture can be taken. Okay, you can have taken the picture, or you could find a picture online. It could be of any animal you want. What you are going to do is you're going to make sure that you print it out the entire size of the regular printer paper, so make sure it takes up the entire thing. Another thing you're going to need is a ruler. You'll also need a pencil, and you'll need your final draft paper. Okay, so I have all 4 of those things here. I'm going to push aside my final draft paper because I don't really need that right now. I am just going to show you how to complete a grid on your top of your drawing. So what I'm going to be using for this, just so that you guys can see it better on the screen, I'm going to be using a Sharpie. You can if you want, but I'd suggest just use a pencil when you're creating your grid. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the top of your paper, okay, and you're going to line up your ruler with the top of your paper, okay? So as you can see here, I have the ruler lined up to where my paper ends, or where it starts, and then it just goes straight across. So what we are doing, this paper is 8.5 by 11, okay? So what we're going to do, just to make it easier on us, we are just going to do a mark on top of every single inch. All right, so I'm starting from here, holding down on my ruler, and I'm just going to make a mark right above every single inch mark on the ruler. So I'm just making little marks, and then at the end, obviously there's going to be a smaller grid here, which is fine because we can't make a mark because the paper is only 8.5. So then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. So what I'm doing, going to the bottom, I'm lining up my ruler as best I can, making sure that the first line starts at the edge of the paper. And I'm just going to once again, create these little tick marks, I like to call them, right above each number so that we have 1 inch by 1 inch squares. Okay? All right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my ruler with the top mark that I made and the bottom mark that I made, okay, down here. And I'm going to create a straight line and almost like connect the dots. So I'm just lining this up very carefully. Okay, holding down on the ruler and then just creating my first grid line. Okay, I'm doing the same thing throughout the entire artwork, or picture I should say, holding down my ruler and then just making the grid line. It's important that your grids are completely straight, your lines are completely straight, so really take the time to measure each part accurately so that you can create an accurate grid and you'll have the same grid on your final draft piece of paper. So I'm just going to continue to do this throughout the entire picture. Okay, I'm just making these vertical lines, and then eventually I'm going to also make horizontal lines, which I'll show you next. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my paper to the side, okay? And essentially what I just did on the top and the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing up here. So once again, I'm going to make sure that I line my ruler up appropriately, make those tick marks right above each number on the ruler, so every inch, I'm just making a little mark, okay? And go by 10, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. So once again, line it up and make your tick marks. And these marks are just like the guidelines essentially so that you can create really straight lines. Okay? And then last step is I am going to line them up, hold down my ruler, and create these lines that go now horizontally along my photo of my dog. Okay, so I'm almost done here. The reason why we do this is because it makes it easier on us when we are drawing. We're going to look at every single grid or every single square within the grid, and we're going to draw exactly what we see in the grid. So you just want to make sure that you are lining these up as best you can. And I have a few more left. One more after this. And remember, I'm really applying pressure down on my ruler so that my ruler doesn't move when I press against it with my marker or my pencil. And done. All right, so now as you can see, I have a bunch of grids here, okay, a bunch of squares. And now this is going to be great for when I start to draw on my final draft piece of paper. Now, when it comes to our final draft piece of paper, we are doing the exact same thing, okay? You are making the exact same grid that you made on here onto a blank piece of paper before you start drawing. So please do not start drawing what you see within each grid. You have to make the grid first on this paper. Now with this paper, you must use a pencil. The reason why is because we're going to be erasing those grid marks. So remember, once again, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'll just show you. Line up the ruler, take a pencil, and lightly now make your tick marks above each number on your ruler so that there's 1 inch, okay? And you're going to do the same thing on the bottom, okay? And I'm just quickly doing this because I don't want to waste too much time, okay? And once again, lining up my tick marks and making a very light line here, okay? So light that you can't even see it. The reason why we're doing light is because we are going to be erasing these, as I said. So you just want to make sure that you really keep it nice and light so that you know where each grid is, where each square is, I should say, and then 2, you can erase. So I'm just doing this same exact thing, continuing down my paper, or across my paper, I should say. And once I'm finished with this, I'm going to also do the horizontal grid lines as well. And this shouldn't take you too long. As you can see, I mean, you know, I think it's going to take me probably maybe 5 or 10 minutes just to grid my paper. It's not very, very difficult. Once again, flip your paper over, the final draft paper, take your pencil and your ruler, make those lines above each number. So you're making 1 by 1 squares, 1 inch by 1 inch. Doing the same thing on the bottom here. Okay, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. And try to be as accurate as possible because you definitely don't want curvy lines here. Or slanted lines, I should say. Okay, once again, nice and very, very lightly making my grid lines. I'm not putting down a lot of pressure as I am creating these grid lines. And as I stated before, the reason why we do this when we're drawing things in, you know, photorealism is because it will make sure that we have a very accurate representation of our photo of our choice. And it makes it easier because instead of looking at the whole entire drawing and getting overwhelmed by it, we are just looking at the drawing in sections, very, very small sections, which is super beneficial, I think, when trying to draw as realistic as possible. Okay. All right, so now you can see here and here, I have the same amount of grids or squares that I have here on here. So let's count really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I have like a half a grid here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a half a grid here. Okay, and going down, I should have 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so you should have 8.5 by 11 squares. All right, so as I said, this is the first part of this project. Take a look at the next video to see what I am going to tell you to do next.